We're live, guys. Sorry about the wait. Things happened. You know how it can be. People arrive at different times.
For various reasons.
We're not pointing any fingers, naming any names. Let's do this thing. So, if you are new to the show and this is unfamiliar to you, then you will know that this is a podcast, a Seattle Seahawks podcast, where in the description we do put the timestamp and we do tell people, hey guys, we are, a podcast and there's a preamble section. If you hate that, you can click the timestamp and just skip all this preamble. But because we're live and we have a low amount of viewers right now, we do a bit of preamble and people have a chance to join live. And then if you are live, please do ask questions, ask the C stuff. If there's anything which is unclear, then we can clean that up for you. But Griff, this is the preamble. So, how was Oppenheimer?
Oppenheimer is great. I loved it. It's a top shelf Nolan movie.
Top shelf?
Yeah.
What else is on that shelf?
I mean, you got to throw The Dark Knight in there.
Right.
That's probably anyone's top. And then after that, though, it gets really like some people like
contentious.
Some people swear by Interstellar. Some people swear by Inception, although there's kind of like a counterculture thing going on with Inception right now, where people think it's not quite as good as remembered.
Right. Yeah. Well, I watched Inception back, and man, that was bad.
And then some people don't like Dunkirk. I love Dunkirk. I thought it was great. Yeah, whatever. But I'm not dogmatic about my Nolan rankings at all. I probably have. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even care.
You don't care, but Oppenheimer's on the top shelf, so maybe Oppenheimer could be a standalone on the top shelf for you.
It might, but I really enjoy the other movies. I think from like a snobby perspective, it might be his best movie. Like from a objective, film lit analysis thing, like
stroking your chin. Yeah,
exactly. But like raw entertainment, it's probably The Dark Knight, right? Just because that's fucking great. Pardon my language.
Yeah.
What did you think about the movie?
Well, I've already told you what I thought. We're doubling up on Oppenheimer talk.
Yeah.
Which must mean it was okay, I guess.
I thought Nolan handled this did not seem like, like a apologia for him at all. Like a very complex person, but like I didn't see the tortured genius, like, oh, he's just misunderstood thing at all. Like Nolan.
No.
I mean, he goes in on him, and like you still see the humanity in him, like what makes him complex. It doesn't mean you have to feel sorry for him per se. Although on some level, I maybe do, but I don't really care that much in that sense. I mean, I don't care as in like I'm not going to bat for him, but you can understand some of the decisions he made, even if you don't agree with them. Acting was amazing. Like every character.
Yeah, they hit it out the park.
Yeah, they all serve their purpose really well. Emily Blunt, when she kind of turns the table on the quasi prosecutor and
that was a very good performance. Yeah,
but she finally goes. Yeah, she let out a lot of pent up.
Because I had my doubts.
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder. Like, I'm sure it's fairly true to life, but I wonder if his partner was actually like her, like loved the margarita like all the time. And
I mean, it wouldn't be shocking considering kind of like what her life was reduced to, and she probably knew they were being watched too. Like that's got to be incredibly stressful. And then he gets to go, live his life out in Los Alamos and play around,
be a big nerd and blow things up.
And she has to do all the homemaking. Like that can probably add up. Let's see.
I found nothing felt superfluous, which in a film which was that long was pretty impressive. Everything was very rich and good.
The pacing of the film made the whole thing feel like one sequence.
Everything was urgent. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, good stuff. It'll be fun to rewatch too, especially with subtitles, because I
Yeah.
had no idea what they were saying half
You
the
had
time.
did you have difficulty? I almost did.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I was kind of lip reading at times.
right. The bass of the music was so loud, my rib cage was vibrating, and I couldn't understand the words.
Where did you sit in the cinema though?
I unfortunately had the aisle seat on the very end, but it was still fine because the screen.
Yeah,
was
no, that's the
short.
back right. That's that big speaker at the back. That's the
Yeah,
subwoofer.
true.
Yeah.
But it was great when we left because it was like the theater that seats like 500 people, and otherwise you're waiting. So I was one of the first people out.
Little life hack.
Yeah. Little perks.
You know what? I might go and see it again tomorrow.
That sounds like a good idea. And I wonder if your perspective will change on certain things, or if different
maybe it will
things will
suck.
resonate. I doubt that.
No. Anyway,
right. Or bad
podcast. We've got a question here, which we're gonna answer this Hawks 0. That is a big important part of this podcast in general. So yeah, that's getting answered. Don't worry about that.
Let's do it.
Okay, time for the podcast. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where Griffin and I are doing what's possibly our final Seahawks 2023 draft recap. It's a recap, but it's excuse me, Griff?
Said realistically, it's probably final, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as much as Jarek Reed and our ability to get New Mexico State tape is impressive, this is probably our final given the time frame. But instead of doing just one player, we're delving into two. We're doing Mike Morris and also Cameron Young. So two big defensive line additions, even though they arrived on day 3 of the NFL draft. Morris out of Michigan in the 4th round, Cam Young out of Mississippi State in the 5th. No, I've got that the wrong way around. Brilliant start. But anyway, both of them, though, important because of Seattle's lack of depth in that area, especially when they were drafted. Obviously, they've since added Jaron Reed, who has emerged is the Seahawks' first-string nose tackle. Cam Young is their presumed backup. And then Mike Morris has been working as the kind of 3-4 defensive end. We're going to start with Morris, though. I'm going to have to look up when these guys were drafted, Griff.
That would be nice.
This is a dreadful start. Okay, can you remember?
The draft was so long ago. Who cares at this point?
Things have happened. Can you remember when they drafted Griff?
I mean, wasn't Morris a 5th round pick and Young was 4th?
He was, and Young was a 4th.
I always forget about Bradford was right in there.
Yeah. So Young, they were sweating it out, and I think he was one of the few bigs that they still liked.
Yep.
But weirdly, we're starting with Morris because you have an obsession with that kind of body type ever since Michael Bennett was traded for what was it? A 5th round pick, was it?
Matty, come on. I thought we turned the page.
Sorry. We collectively had definitely moved on from that point.
Let's see you turn. Yeah, back toward nicer thoughts.
So
we are starting with the 5th round, the 5th rounder, the guy that was drafted after, and I think that's because what Morris could be on paper is more exciting than what Young could be, even if both turn out good. If they both turn out the way you want them to be, it's more fun to talk about a guy that lines up over guards and can rush the passer than it is to talk about a run stuffing nose tackle, even if that run stuffing nose tackle is really good, right?
Wow, that is real kind of classism of NFL trenches.
I'll speak for myself at least.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So how do you answer? Why are we starting with the 5th rounder?
Because he might be able to rush the passer. Let's be honest here. And when we talk about a guy who could rush the passer, Morris out of Michigan,
you agreed with.
He had 7.5 sacks in his final year. He only had 0.5 sacks in 2021, but that 2020 season, 7.5 sacks. And that was a season where context-wise, he was kind of had to be their key man. Aiden Hutchinson had left. He went from being a role player, and David Ajabo had left as well. And he then became kind of a more of a starting player who they deployed across the line rather than a bit part kind of sub package rotation dude. So really took off as a pass rusher. But what's interesting about Morris and the film we're going to look at today is in 2021 he seemed to play a larger size, and then in 2022 he seemed to skinny down a bit. Now he obviously had that difficult pre-draft process where he was still dealing with a high ankle sprain, in his words, and he came in at 6'5", 275 pounds, and he tested pretty poorly. He had a 4.95 second 40 with 1.64 10-yard split. That 10-yard split is not terrible, but his vert was only 20.5 inches. His broad was 9'2". Then his short shuttle at the pro day was 4.65 seconds, and his 3-cone was 7.46 seconds. So really not very explosive testing. But since, of course, when he was drafted, Clint Hurt, the defensive coordinator, gave him the instructions to no more backing away from the table or anything, and implying, Seattle wanted him to put on the pounds and be a bigger player. And if they want him to play as the defensive end, and we'll get onto his fit in this current Seahawks scheme, if they want him to play as a defensive end, he does need to be a bit larger so he can play over a guard. And he apparently has come into camp over 290 pounds. And he said to the reporters at the time when he was drafted that putting on that kind of weight isn't going to be an issue. And we believe that's closer to the kind of weight he played in 2021. Now, going into 2022 and watching that film, there were more examples of him playing inside than I thought would be the case. But it was largely 2021 where his best reps rush came playing on the inside were true, right, Griff? That was very convoluted.
Yeah,
but it's very important.
No, I agree. I feel like when we're talking about him as an interior player, we're really talking about his 2021 tape. That doesn't mean what he did in 2022 doesn't still translate the good and the bad. But if we're trying to build the house of the eval or whatever, I'd start with 2021, where he was more reliably in the B gap as a 4-eye, as a 3 technique, and engaging the guard tackle combos or just tackle or guard, whatever the case may be. So that's kind of what you're starting with, the ground up stuff.
Yeah. So before we get to that tape that we've promised, there's one interesting thing I found. So looking at the Sports Info Solutions Draft Hub, which is still up and still pretty useful for finding certain advanced analytics on the draft prospects from 2022 and that season. In Morris's redshirt junior year, he tied 11th in total points rating per pass rush. Now, he had 98, but he was behind 9 other players in that, but he was 10th best out of the draft prospects. But if you look at the numbers, that was when he was grouped with edge rushers. So he was just behind BJ Ojolari, for instance. But in terms of the bigs, the only guy he was behind was Tyree Wilson, which is something to get onto in a second. And then his pass rush total points per game, he was tied 18th. But again, in terms of the bigs, he wasn't behind anyone really other than Tyree Wilson. In total points rating per play, he was behind Zach Harrison and Tyree Wilson as the 3rd best big. And then, in pressure rate, he had 16% pressure rate, which again, just behind Tyree Wilson. So basically, he was kind of advanced analytics speaking, the kind of later round option to a Tyree Wilson. And in terms of body type, they have a similar body type. In terms of style, slightly different level of athletes. But I found that intriguing. But the tape is.
I was just going to say, he did move well for a 280 guy. The movement skills, the combine being what it was, you mentioned the caveats there. But the way he moved on tape at 280 in his junior year, or was it senior year, his last year in college, was still pretty impressive. It's how that translates to the inside more. And we might see him outside a little bit, as a 5 technique in under fronts. But he's intriguing all the way around for a mid-round pick.
Yeah. So the tape, we're going to look at Michigan State 2021 first off. So here we go. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. And what this will look like in Seattle is fairly similar to the kind of stuff Michigan does. He played a bit of 3-tech. He mainly played 4-eye and kind of 5-tech. We'll get to that sort of stuff. But going back to that athletic stuff that we were talking about, a lot of his sacks, the 7.5 sacks I mentioned in 2020. So we're looking for 3-tech reps, yes?
Yeah, so 2:23 this game, I think, the timestamp. Okay.
Yeah, I've got some stuff now.
Okay.
So here it's hard to tell if he is this looks like a purposeful pad back from the start, but it's solid enough,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, he has a bunch of reps like this where it's fine, and that's kind of what you're looking for. He's mirror stepping. He's a mirror stepping 3 technique, which I thought was an interesting choice for, it's almost like straight up in the gap. But I thought it was interesting that Michigan used a mirror stepping 3 technique, because usually it's a power stepping. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of this Y off and to keep these lighter bodies clean. Yeah.
I mean, he maintains his leverage on the tackle. I think out of his stance, he's fine. He stays low for 6'6", and then he's able to keep his front side half clean to be able to make a play in the gap. So that's Ken Walker there. We recognize him at running back. So yeah, I mean, that's just beyond that. Like, there isn't a lot to say here.
No, and he's been in training camp. He's been kind of working on being lower because he's a tall guy. What, he's 6'6", is he?
Yeah.
He's always going to have a kind of pad level deficiency, so it's just about how you compensate for that. Most of his really wild stuff came when he was rushing as a 3-tech in a 2-point stance. Here you get a kind of 4-point pass rush, and he's testing the anchor of the guard.
And he routinely, like, the one thing he did show is that he does have power. Like, he does have legit power on the inside. It's not devastating, but it's there. Like, the long arms help him here. Like, the guard really doesn't have, he doesn't really have a shot here. It's a 1-step drop from the quarterback. If this was a gun 3 drop, he's probably getting bull rushed into the quarterback's lap. So
yeah,
it shows the traits.
What I found was if he could develop a more like definitive long arm move, that would really help his game. But he almost struggled kind of connecting that with his footwork. Like it was just very kind of unrefined. His hand usage very kind of sporadic and inconsistent in terms of its success rate. Here's like a 4-tech rep where he shows some cornering ability to pull himself around when he's the contained rusher.
Right, and that's a situation he'll find himself in Seattle plenty. And that shows the movement skills, because he's 290 pounds here. He's 292 supposedly. He's not 280. He's legit 292. So, like the C gap player to this, or the B gap player to the side of the edge that is walked out, is going to have to expand to the C gap and rush the outside track. So the fact that he can actually get there, and then the way he can actually turn the corner a little bit, is really impressive. Kind of uses like a snatch rip move and reduce the inside pad a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, it's again, it shows the traits, and theoretically something like that should also translate to rushing guards and cornering on the guard from rushing from a wide angle. He just didn't get a lot of those opportunities.
No.
So it's a translatable rep.
Yeah, and that's what I'd say. Like, a lot of the reps, then they wouldn't blow you away, but they are translatable.
Yeah.
along with that kind of that sack production and yeah, the kind of athleticism on tape being more impressive than whatever testing allowed it to show. Here, there's another 3-tech rush on the guard. This is kind of he's to the center slide, so there's not much doing here.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot for him to put together in terms of as a pass rusher and kind of working like a primary move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was strange because on the edge he had moves at the top of the rush. Like he primarily liked the bull rush or long arm inside counter, but he could work to the outside half of the tackle. So again, you'd think like, okay, well, let's apply that when rushing guards. I think first and foremost, though, it's going to have to be counters off of a bull rush, like more like swim moves, maybe more push pulls, stuff like that, or snatch, whatever you want to call it.
Over 33 inch arms, like there should be a lot more he can do with the hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
a long arm down the chest and a bull would be nice.
Right. You'd like to see him throwing like jab step, like a jab into a like cross chop, right? Like Draymond has, or a speed swipe. There's actually a couple examples where he throws out a speed swipe. One of the things he can do is when he's bull rushing, he'll stack them up and then just rotate the guard to his inside shoulder and rip under. And that's just like a strong man like move, like rotational strength. So he does have that, but you'd like to see a little bit more like use handwork. So I like this play because he knows. So instead of getting hands into the tackle, he instead shoulders him, rips through because he knows he's going to need both hands available to make the tackle, considering it's short yardage goal line.
Yeah, knows where the back's going.
Right, and that just kind of shows like he can adapt his play style to the situation. Like he understands football. Like the guard goes away, and he immediately has eyes on the tackle.
Yeah. I believe he comes from a football family as well. I think his dad played for FSU.
Yeah. So like,
and you can see stuff like that.
So my general impression of him on the inside was that like he is an inside player, or he can be. He's not. This isn't like trying to see if LJ Collier can play inside, where it is a legit project. Like I think Clint Hurd is working with the foundation. That doesn't mean there isn't work to be done. Like it's all consistency with coming.
Maybe it was.
But I think in general, like he does have natural hip extension. So it's just a matter of the feet and the hands being in the right place so we can actually use that. Hip extension meaning he's actually exerting power through his hands into the block, which can only happen if you drive out of your hips.
Right.
And that's something that is like, that's a movement that's natural to him. And that's hard for tall guys.
Yeah.
So
he's playing super heavy to the guard.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was to protect the linebacker a little bit, because he's a B gap player, but it's like primary, secondary gap, right? So he's not true two gapping. It's more like gap and a half. So he's available to the A gap. And the fact that he's able to put the guard on his outside shoulder and allows himself to become available into that backside A gap, I think is useful. Obviously the ball goes inside that fold block or wham block, whatever it is. Or what would you call that? Is it like it's not a trap, because it's not. Either way, I think he did his part here. Like he gets knocked back and then he's able to control the block to work inside of the A gap and actually be available where both hands are free to make a tackle if the ball hit there. So I think, what does that show? Like it shows play strength, it shows technique.
Yeah, that's almost how they'd play a like head up on a tight end or on a tackle.
Mm-hmm. And like even though like he's mirror stepping here, I think we both think he'd be better power stepping, as in where you have a split leg stance and the back foot comes forward so you can get vertical into the block, more surge into the block.
Yeah.
Like there's a vision where he's even better inside when they let him play a one gap technique.
So On that point, Griff, let's talk, as we promised to, let's
Yeah.
talk the difference between mirror stepping and power stepping, which is important to understand when we're talking any defensive lineman in Seattle. So uh, Seattle uses both mirror stepping and power stepping techniques. Now, they're terms that we use because we've heard Clint Hurt use these terms to describe how he has his defensive linemen play. He did use the terms when they're technically running Pete Carroll's system, but ultimately there's two ways of doing it. And Griff, this isn't a unique thing to Carroll or Hurt, is it? It's the father of those terms as we know them is the defensive line guy, the coach, who I'm completely blanking on the name. Who did
Pete Jenkins?
Pete Jenkins, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if he uses those terms. Like he uses equivalent. He uses synonyms for them. They mean the same thing. He just has different vocab, but they mean the same thing.
Right. So
and he's still like, I bet you Clint Hurt's tree goes back to Pete Jenkins.
Yeah. So there's only so many ways of playing on the D line. And in the NFL, I think they really kind of fine tune it to and also you get guys who play it still with a different style, but there's basically two ways of doing it. So the main thing is when you're power stepping, you have one gap, and the main idea is that you're going to play that one gap technique in an outside shade. So if you're one technique, you're outside a center. If you have three technique, you're outside a guard. If you're outside the center, you're responsible for the A gap. If you're outside the guard, you're responsible for the B gap. And then the last technique is the 5 technique, where you are outside the tackle, responsible for the C gap. Now, when you are power stepping, you are at this playing in a 3-point stance, and when you get out of you're stepping with your back foot forwards, 6-inch forwards, a 6-inch short step, and you're striking with your two hands and trying to knock back the guy in front of you. Essentially, you're going to try and knock the crap out of him.
And it starts with the split leg stance, right? You got one
yeah,
front,
sorry, yeah, that's very important.
1 foot up, 1 foot back, right?
Okay. Yeah, a split leg stance, and that back foot steps forward, a little short step, which they describe as 6-inch forward step. Now, obviously, you don't stop there. You keep the feet churning. You try and pull your hips through and uncork into the block and hold your gap. There's a lot more other intricacies, but that is what we mean by power step. And so certain skill sets are more suited to that versus mirror stepping. So mirror stepping in the simplest terms, rather than being a one gap thing, is two gapping. So you'll see a guy kind of, rather than taking that 6-inch step, he is trying to take a lateral step with the angle that the center or the guard that he's mirror stepping or the tackle that he's mirror stepping is also taking. So in terms of your alignment, that will be from a head up, so 0 technique over the center, 2 technique over the guard, 4 technique head up on the tackle. That'll be from those kind of alignments. We'll get to intricacy of that. And then they're just trying to take a lateral 6-inch step while also catching the guy. And rather than striking him back, it's more of a catch. And then they're able to peek in one gap or peek in the other gap. Now, the way Seattle had always played mirror stepping, bar a few exceptions, is rather than telling them they're 2 gap players, they are gap and a half players. So instead of playing head up on a guy, they're playing kind of inside shade on that guy, for instance, in a 4-eye, or they're a 0 technique head up nose tackle in the bare front, but their primary job is to play the backside A gap. So they're basically playing still one gap, but because they're catching and holding that guy and sort of mirroring him rather than playing super aggressive downhill and striking the crap out of him. If you're, say, in the B gap as a 4-eye, so you've lined up on the inside shoulder of the tackle, he's stepped to your left, you've stepped laterally to your left and tried to catch him but hold your B gap. But if the ball declares outside because you've caught him and you're in a nice controlled position with your feet under you, you are then able to hopefully shed him and play gap and a half and win in from the B gap that you were holding into the C gap. So it's when you hear like D linemen complain about Seattle being a bit passive in recent years, that's kind of the thing they're talking about, because you're kind of having to wait for that guy and catch him and hold your gap and let people kind of make you right. So, Griff, did I do a poor job explaining that second
No,
thing?
I think that, I mean, it's really hard to explain only verbally or with audio, and I wouldn't add or change anything. It's yeah. So I mean, the well, I just said I wouldn't add anything, but
Do
if I were to add, it's the notion of, like, when you're power stepping, the whole split leg stance that Matty was talking about, it's conducive toward, like, that foot comes forward no matter what. So it's simpler for the player, because no matter what the guard does, that back foot comes forward. So even
Yeah, so
if the foot that is up, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so on that point, if I'm playing as a left 3 technique, so I'm a 3 technique, I know I have the B gap, I know I'm lining up on the outside shoulder of the guard, I'm going to line up in my split leg stance with my left foot forward and my right leg back, because I know I'm going to step forward with my right foot and knock the crap out of the guard in front of me.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas, like, mirror stepping, your feet are evenly distributed pre-snap, and because it's a horizontal step, like you said, like the use of the term power step is intuitive because you're powering into the guy. Whereas mirror stepping, that's also intuitive. You're mirroring the guy in front of you's first step. So if he goes to the right, my first step is with my right foot to my right. Or if he goes to the tackle's right, the defensive tackle's right. If he goes to the left, it's your left foot goes to the left, right? So it's in the notion of, like, Y2 gap versus Y1 gap, it's kind of, you know, a broader picture view. But for the Seahawks, well, this is probably getting too theoretical and stuff, so it may not be worthwhile to
Do
discuss
it.
it. But well, so like a 4-eye, if you're a gapped out defense, even though they're too high, that means that they don't have a stacked box. They still have the safety as a primary fitter, like to the quarter side usually. So that means if there are 7 gaps and you have 6 guys in the box, you still have your 7th guy. You still have a guy that is responsible for the 7th gap, and he's just in the coverage shell, the safety. So for every gap you have one defender. So in that case, why would you have your defenders your defensive lineman quasi 2 gap? They're 1 gap responsible, but they play a 2 gap technique within that 1 gap organization to accommodate the fact that the safety is coming from deep. So you're trying to buy time and space so that the math works for you by the time the safety gets there. Now, because it might take a while for the safety to get there, coming from 12 yards out as opposed to a linebacker who's 5 or 6 yards out, because that defensive lineman in front of that safety is playing a 2 gap technique, he can kind of work into the other gap, which then the safety can then just fit off of him. So you just correct that guy. So if he now goes into the C gap, all right, I'll fold into the B gap. If he's still in the B gap, fine, I'll just insert into the C gap. Now, the irony with the Seahawks last year is that they were so good power stepping that it overcame the on-paper disadvantage of not 2 gapping. Whereas they had an on-paper advantage of 2 gapping, but their execution was such that it didn't actually give them the on-paper advantage in practice. So it was a lot of theory versus practice. I mean, in their 3-4 front, they were still good mirror stepping. They were just better power stepping. It was the power stepping and the nickel fronts, the 2-4-5, where they struggled. And then, of course, this year we see them in training camp. They're power stepping, they're 1 gapping, and their nickel front. So their nickel front should improve. But it's not just the techniques up front. It's you got to play a little more cover 3. You got to have a little bit more line movement. You got to spice it up a little bit. You got to send fire zones. You know, you can't just be static in it. It's putting way too much situational stress on the players. Like nobody around the league could defend the run in it. So, but changing the techniques will help.
Yeah, and on that point, Griff, the understanding, I mean, Chip has asked, that's what Woods was complaining about, right, with the catching, the two gapping stuff. I mean, in terms of Woods' job, he was always kind of having to do that, but
yeah,
he's probably just annoyed that the backers behind him were having trouble fitting off him to make him right, because he then had a longer job. Like, if you're gonna hold a block up front, then the guys behind have to make you right. But generally, like, Seattle was always asked the D linemen whether they're one gapping or two gapping to control their gap, so not get upfield and penetrate, unless they're running a fire zone stunt or stunting them into the backfield. But
yeah.
the main thing is, last year they struggled with the two gapping element, and they tried at the start of the year to do more of them, even when they were in front in coverages where you thought they perhaps didn't need to. And then they kind of went backwards on that slowly, as much as they could, other than they kept doing it in the nickel stuff, which they clearly, I mean, I think the backers were having difficulty with that as well, the linebackers. And now evidence is this season they've gone back on that as well. So long story short, they will two gap and they'll one gap, they will power step and they will mirror step, but they won't, I don't think, based on the evidence we've seen from training camp, thank you, Kenny McIntosh's Instagram, they will not be mirror stepping as much as they tried to last year and struggled with, while they also have got lighter. So you can, those different skill sets give you slightly different feel and flavor to it when they do try it, along with the in power stepping. But yeah, football can be quite complicated. That is basically, one gapping versus two gapping. And when Seattle used to two gap, it was to buy players more time, extra time, when they're asked to play the run from a deeper spot on the field, and perhaps play the run while also being responsible for a deep area of the field in pass coverage. So yeah. Also, if you've ever got a question like that, really honestly, searching that term on Twitter or X is a good idea. If you just put in quotation marks power step or power stepping and then click the videos tab, you will find you'll find probably a clip from Griff of a guy doing it in Seattle, and you'll be like, that's what it looks like. Put on YouTube Pete Jenkins D-line. There'll be great stuff there. And if you want the Clint Hurt thing I was alluding to, direct message me. And yeah, that honestly, with stuff like that with football, as much as we're trying to explain it over the audio format, if that's a bit confusing, I mean, you can re-listen to us explaining it, but really, it's kind of the more you'll watch, if you're just focusing for that thing when you're watching D-line, you'll start seeing it. It's like corner technique. It took me ages to grasp, and I still sometimes question it because you're just staring at people's feet for ages. You're like, is he actually doing that? Because it all happens so fast. And even if you slow it down, you don't necessarily know, because they might have a bad rep or be a bit slow off the ball. So yeah, time and effort. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Griff.
Yeah.
You wanted to look at Penn State 2021. So fun story about Penn State 2021 of Mike Morris, who will be asked in Seattle to power step and mirror step, but is probably, given Seattle's maybe bringing back the 5 technique, he might be playing more of a kind of 4-eye, which basically the 5 technique in Seattle always used to line up to the tight end side. And it when we're talking about guys to protect,
in under he would.
In under, yeah, which
in over he's technically the weak side end.
Yes, but with how Seattle's running this system, I think
it's bare tight. Excuse me, it's bare tight and under. So yeah, he'd be to the tight end side.
Yeah,
as a 5 or 4, whatever they want to do.
And I didn't even realize we had this Penn State game. So how fun is that? So
yeah,
so you can talk me through this.
Well, the Penn State game is great for him because there's a little bit of decent play, but then it also shows the plays that we saw in MSU, but it also shows the limits of what his natural anchor is. Like In a 4-down front on the interior, he's going to get washed. I think this is an example. He's playing a 0 technique nose tackle. He would never do that. Okay, he switches to a shade 1 technique. Oh, this is a pass rush anyway. I mean, it's a stump, but it kind of shows like how quickly he gets vertical, right?
Nice job, 91, picking the center.
Yeah. I think so for the 404 timestamp, I think he's playing 1 technique in this. And
but it's like a super wide shade, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a pass rush front, right? I mean, look at that. But it does show like this is why they would never ask him to do this in a normal run situation. This is a quarterback draw. And this is why. Like, I mean, he's also not thinking run, but he's, to his credit, he reads run blocking. So he's like, oh shit, okay, well, I better play this honestly. But he's gonna get washed because he's 292 against a double here, and he's not gonna hold up there. So it's a good clip to pick out. Not that this situation would ever translate to the NFL, but what happens in the situation would if they were to ask him to play like a heavy mirror stepping 3 technique in their over G front last year. He would get demolished. And it's because it's not his skill set. I mean, look what happens to 91. I mean, that's actually a really bad rep from 91. It's still a 1-on-1. But yeah, so I thought that rep was useful in illustrating the limits, like in bear, in 3-4, in the 3-3-5. Morris should work in time, but I don't think we can expect him to be a presence in their nickel stuff on even power stepping on like in high run situations. If they want, I mean, definitely trot him out there in like high pass situations where they could run, where you're okay with giving up a 4-yard run, a 5-yard run. But don't expect to stuff the run 1st and 10 shotgun and their nickel over front, even if they're power stepping.
Yeah.
Especially in too high, that is.
Griff, we just got a crazy generous donation from Fats McClure.
Wow, that is crazy generous.
Fats, thank you so much. I saw your question earlier, but that is super kind. Thank you very much.
Fats, that is very kind of you.
Fats asked, totally off topic, would you ever break down your team stuff and maybe talk about how you coach it and your learning process as a coach? I assume you mean the London Olympians, Fats. Perhaps in the off season, but the problem is our off season is the American season. But that's something I'm thinking about. You'd see how I am a complete charlatan.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Fats.
Yeah, that was very awesome. Kind. It's very kind.
And we won't be spending it on candy either.
I'll be spending it on candy.
Yeah.
Just
so
Fats is a good guy.
So Mike Morris, this is
well, what timestamp is this?
This is the same play, Griff. But what's interesting about this play to me is we've seen Seattle using this kind of shade in the even front. So it's a wide 1 tech, but
yeah,
by playing like this and how Seattle seems to be doing it is tilting it slightly. It kind of protects them from the guard double. And if Morris had step is so wide that he kind of gets in trouble because his base is kind of off.
Yeah, he does take a wide step.
And I think he's trying to set something up over here, which didn't really materialize.
Well, I thought so. I mean, he's thinking pass though pre-snap.
Yes.
So the fact that his right leg, his back foot doesn't drive forward tells that he's not cheating the play. Like he's playing the.
It could have been a pick game for him from 91 again.
Yeah. Maybe 91 was supposed to get there.
Yeah.
And then also I thought maybe he's taking a wide stance because he knows he has a natural leverage issue being 6'6", and the wider the stance, that helps him get more knee bend. So he gets lower so he can drop his hips more. I don't know. It's a weird rep, but I just thought like even guys that have good anchors, even if they have like a lousy rep of technique, they still hold up just because they're ginormous and strong, and they just make it work. He's one of those guys that has to really play with good, consistent technique because, 292 is 292, but 292 at 6'6", it's not 292 at 6 foot 6'1". You know what I mean? The density is different. That matters. So he kind of has to be really consistent with this technique.
He does. Yeah. When we're allowed to, we'll have to cover that technique that Seattle's using on their even front. It's so funny how it's so funny. That's such a nerdy thing to say, but it's amusing to me how it's almost foreign seeing Seattle use a one tech shaded nose tackle now. Like, I'm questioning whether that even is wide in Seattle or if that's just how it always used to look, but I'm just not used to it.
Yeah.
So because they've used a 2-eye last year in even and head up nose in base or a heavy one.
Mm-hmm. So I thought this play was useful because he powers the tackle. It's not anything crazy, but it's not like he's converting speed to power. Like, he's literally being pushed away, and then he comes back and he's still able to gain some depth on the tackle.
Play strength, right?
Yeah. So there's play strength here. I mean, he's not a soft player. Because that's not expanding from the B gap to the C gap and then bull rushing the tackle is not like the most advantageous place to bull rush a guy from. So, like, I feel like a lot of these rushes last year, we would see the B gap player who, like, and say, even though this isn't Bear, but the B gap player to the side where the outside linebacker drops, they expand to the C gap, the B gap player would. And then, like, nothing happens. They're just contained rushing. Like, they wouldn't actually get any depth here. He actually gets some depth. And, like, what happens if the quarterback holds the ball just for a half second longer? He's probably gracing the quarterback with the back of the
it's
right
causing issues of discomfort there. And I mean, this ball is sailed.
Yeah. So
let's
not a nothing.
Go to this angle. You can kind of see the impact on the pocket. What timestamp now, Griff?
All right. Let's do 12:20 just because it's kind of a fun one, even though it's from the edge. No, that was that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, here you go.
Okay. So this shows the guy's just power, right? Like, he's not even, it's kind of the same thing where he's not rushing a straight line where you convert.
It's not optimal.
Yeah. So, like, as soon as he converts it, like, he has easy power on this guy. That's easy power.
This is what I mean as well. If, like, he had a more definitive or more definite long arm, and he really could, maybe work the feet, as you were saying, Griff, maybe like a jab or, like, something with the footwork, a stutter to just uncork that down the chest of someone. Mm-hmm. It would really intrigue me. And I'm sure that something like BT Jordan is immediately identified as, like, this is, we're going to work this. You have the traits. It's time.
Yeah. Or you'd like to see, with his outside arm, his left arm, could he forklift the right tackle's right arm, and then he could cleanly corner on him. Now, I think Morris probably thought, oh, my bull's working here, so I'm just going to keep bullying. But there's so much potential there to use his outside arm with this stuff when rushing half man or working the inside arm when rushing guards when he opens up the A gap. So, like, that shows traits. I think 23. Okay, let's actually speed up and go to 34 because there's a really fun pass rush. It's just kind of like he can bull rush his way to the quarterback. It's just more of what we're saying. And it goes from two arms to one arm. It turns into a long arm a little bit at the end.
Yeah, and I see the kind of forklift element, which you were sort of talking about,
Yeah. So yeah, you get him those one-on-ones. I mean, he might have something as a pass rusher. Like their rank and file interior run defenders don't really have a whole lot of pass rush. I mean, Quentin Jefferson did, but then he wasn't that good of a run defender. We
No.
were always thinking, could Poona Ford have a little bit more this year? And then it never quite happened, right? Like he had a little bit. Shelby Harris was a good player for them, but he was literally like 1 year past his prime or his peak because he was a high-end interior pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
So the question with Morris is he's a candidate for he's going to be one of the rotational early down run defenders, but he might be of those guys, he might have some potential in pass rush. And you can't say that about every guy. Like, you know, whoever, who else is like, well, we kind of feel the same way about Miles Adams in some ways, but I don't know, like Tony McDaniel, we appreciate it. We never thought, oh, maybe he'll have pass rush this year, right? Like, no, we knew who Tony McDaniel was.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Morris is like in terms of like his place on the roster, and the more I kind of understand about how Seattle is running the defense, but just over the years watching John Schneider, they try and get kind of mirrors for players on their roster, which seems obvious, but like Morris isn't always visible, but like Morris to me is the Draymond Jones mirror, right? Like in terms of now stylistically, there's differences obviously, but in terms of how they're going to be used and like what Morris's role is going to be and the alignments and assignments he's going to be deployed in, it's Jones, right, Griff?
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
But if I recall, Jones coming out was more of a kind of fluidy type. He wasn't.
Yeah, and Jones coming out was working with less than Morris did as a run defender inside. Like Draymond legitimately got better every year. He put on weight. Yeah. He became more technique oriented. At OSU, he was just like a really fun, like third down player. At least as far as he translated him to day one to the NFL, and then he earned his keep and became a 3-down player. So I don't like Morris is working with more day one as a run defender than Draymond Jones was. And so, I mean, with Morris, we're probably talking year 2, year 3, but year 1 is just whatever you can get out of him.
One thing I found with his game was he has pretty good redirection skills for a guy his size. And before his high ankle sprain in 2022, where he missed the Illinois game, it was hurting for Ohio State. And I think he hurt it during the Nebraska game. So he was like hurt for like half the games. But the speed at the size was, I mean, we're not quite seeing it here because, like, again, on the interior, things happen quicker. But, like, the speed at his size was impressive. And this sort of stuff is very intriguing. So,
yeah,
here we've got him as a 4-eye, and in theory, you'd think he would be playing the tackle, trying to mirror him. I think they knew that this was an indicator for this guy to rock back across the line of scrimmage. But anyway, the ability to strike the guard, he is one because the play isn't over after the first knockback. Like here, it might look like he's kind of reached or sealed into this outside gap, into this inside gap to free up this outside gap. But here he's able to fight and win that position. Like he's won that outside gap.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's lockout. Yeah,
to be able to from the lockout position to swim in or rip. It's like a rip inside, isn't it? To get off the block and make contact on the back. I mean, because if he doesn't make this tackle and he's just content with playing the outside gap here, that this is probably going because the way that run spacing works, if you know, that's not ideal spacing.
Otherwise, that's 10 yards up the middle.
And when Pete Carroll talks about being more dynamic up front, this is kind of part of what he means. This doesn't scream dynamic, but the ability to, okay, he's locked out, he's in his gap, the ball is clearly, the pads are north-south on the back, he's not going to be able to redirect with that wide step up here. So I need to shed this and get to the ball, and he does that. So this is playing. Go ahead, Griff.
No, I was going to say, like, so he's power stepping too, right? And it shows how much surge he can get into the block from that. And I think, like, in time he could be an okay mirror stepping 4-eye, but he could be like a really good power stepping 3 technique in a 5-man front, whether it's, you know, under, reduced, over, a legit bear, you know, whatever. He could be really wreak havoc in there. I mean,
yeah, where I see difficulty for him is on those combos, because he's going to be so high that the guy coming to get him is just going to be, you know, enjoy stuff.
right.
He's going to have a big target to look at.
Yeah. The backside guy is going to have a lot of surface area to get a hold of to knock him out. So, what timestamp was that? Was that 46:35?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we check out 23:05?
Oh, we missed that?
Yeah, because I got excited.
You got excited
rush on that bull rush. All right, what even happens on this one?
This looks like a pass rush.
Okay, yeah. So it shows the he transfers. So he's a pass rushing nose tackle here, basically a wide one technique.
Yeah, we call this 2-eye.
Yeah, 2-eye. I just did it because his stance is more like a whatever. But so even though he kind of transfers to the guard because it's a game, his fluidity to basically arm over on the guy and transition to the inside is just, it comes really easy to him. A lot of guys.
Yeah, this is what I'd like to see more of, but the fact that it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to be able to play with a 2-way go as an interior rusher. You have to, because the angles change. When the angle makes it to where the inside move is more viable, you have to be able to go there. And he recognizes that it is, and that he has the ability to kind of. Now you'd like to see like a super exaggerated like club swim or something, right, in time, or like a hump move, almost like a counter.
Yeah, this is like a very, very subtle club swim. If you look at the left hand and then the right.
Yeah. But it's him like realizing, okay, like my upper body needs to come over the top on him. So, you know, in preseason especially, we'd like to see him fire out of his block on a guard, make the guard kind of panic so he oversets, and then you see Morris stick him with his left hand and then swim over with his right arm really quickly. You know, like you want to see something like really exaggerated and explicit like that.
I have to say though, whoever 68 is, I mean, we don't have to be mean, but
yeah, Penn State's O-line is kind of bad.
Doesn't
at least in 2021.
Yes, other than that left tackle, right?
The left tackle, yeah, he was kind of. Although he was the guy that dropped. Was that Rashid? Well, I don't remember.
What do you mean dropped?
In the draft.
No. That's, you're thinking of the other one. This is the good left tackle was going to come out and be a top 5 pick, and then he stayed.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's one more play to kind of, and I think for Morris that we should show 48:05 because it shows it's a bad rep, and so we kind of need to offset our cautious optimism with a reminder of like.
Well, I think he's got a tough task ahead of him. I'm not as optimistic.
Okay. Okay, well then this clip is right up your alley. So you should.
And I think, yeah, based on what I'm seeing here, this looks kind of like the stuff that is why. So here he's playing a kind of 4.3 technique over the guard.
That's rough.
Just a big surface to aim at is what we are kind of saying.
Yeah.
This is not a bad single rep against him, but I don't really know how you coach this because like he's lowish. It's just outside pad is just big. It's high because he's tall.
So this is the problem with him mirror stepping. Now he probably won't be a mirror stepping 3 technique in the NFL for the Seahawks, but theoretically if he's power stepping and there's a backside combo on him, the goal would be to create like horizontal unevenness between the guard and the tackle. So get knocked back into the guard so that the tackle's angle is screwed up, so that he doesn't have a diagonal angle on him, that he has a flat angle.
Yeah, that's a dream for him. But like this is the kind of rep that if he will surely be asked to play a 4-eye here for Seattle and have the exact same problem from a George Kittle as a tight end. And we should say as well, like Draymond Jones is very poor against combo blocks.
Yeah. I mean, Draymond. So that's true, and the reason why you don't see very much of it is because Denver is also a 5-man surface team. They play 3-4 bear, tight, and eagle.
And what they did when they were in the nickel even front is they would fire zone to try and alleviate stress from Draymond.
Right.
And when he played inside and they didn't, problems happened, which we've tweeted out if you want to look at that.
Right. So now when Draymond is backside, like the weak 4-eye where there's no tight end there and he can just have one-on-ones on the backside of shotgun runs, he beats the tackle's butt all game long for the most part. The front side of it can be dicey because then you have the guard combo backside, but you're the front side and the ball doesn't always necessarily bounce to the front side, so you make it work. But yeah, like right there, like that play that you just showed, like that's the limits of a guy who's only 290. Like 290 can make a living inside, but 290 can also get rocked downfield by a combo block, you know, if you're not really good. Like that's why most guys are, if they want to be good run defenders, they're 320. And then when you become 320, you're no longer a good pass rusher, most of them. So that's the guys that are truly elite that can defend the run at 310, 315 and rush the passer at 310, 315 get drafted in the first round. And then get paid $20 million a year. Like that's, so you're working with trade-offs here. But like he's a 5th rounder. So there's a path for him becoming something interesting. There's also a path for him having the career of a 5th rounder, right? So.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm being realistic about year one, like it's a good year one for him if he plays 200 snaps would be a great year one for him, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Because at the 3-4 defensive end spot for Seattle, there is Draymond Jones. I think Mario Edwards is more of a kind of pass rushy kind of dude, even though they'll try work him in there. But like realistically, if he's playing a lot of snaps, then
he's the Quentin Jefferson replacement. They brought Jefferson in to be an interior pass rusher.
And then Miles Adams is the other kind of defensive end type. And based on the practices I saw today, first day in pads as well, he is being played at the end, which is good for him.
Yeah.
So then that's 3 starters. And then that's where Mike Morris needs to kind of get his stuff done. Because if he's not doing that, that's when to be concerned. So basically, he should be the second guy off the bench.
Yeah.
And then he's on track. If he's not, then that's a concern. And the preseason, he's going to get a lot of reps in kind of the stuff he should be good at. I already mentioned the similarities with Michigan, but even how they played the 2-4-5 look or their nickel even front, it had similarities to Seattle as well. So it would have been an easy scout for them to project that to the pros, as we've just seen a lot of it does project. So
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So
Cam Young.
Cam Young is from Mississippi State. He is a bit older than Morris. Should have said Morris was a redshirt junior. Young is a 5th-year senior, so he is turning 23, or has turned 23, actually. Happy birthday. No. Wow, this is exciting. Is the American date? No, he has turned 23. Great. Okay. So, I mean, to quickly recap, I said this guy was immediately like he played in a Seahawky way, like the way he struck blocks and had heavy hands and stuff like that. And Griff, I think you hadn't really watched him pre-draft. How dare you not watch I
watched him a little bit. I watched broadcast. I didn't watch
right. Yeah, the broadcast. But Yeah, he plays. And also, going through this, he had 9 tackles for loss in his career in the SEC and 51 tackles in 2021, 2.5 tackles for loss, 37 tackles in 2022, 3 tackles for loss. And impressed, pretty solid production. He is mainly a run stuffer. But I was saying before we came on air, the fact that Mississippi State like moved their line around so much and kind of relied on games and kind of throwing stuff at the wall to confuse offenses actually works to Young's game's kind of disadvantage for showcasing his best stuff and the stuff he'll be asked to do in the NFL. And from a Seattle perspective, it works to their advantage because Young, there's less reps of him doing it, so less value in his game, in his tape. But when you see it, you're like, okay, this is a guy who can definitely do that in the NFL a lot more often. And that's what they'll be hoping for. I think Pete said he's up to 320 pounds. He was lighter at Mississippi State because of how much they moved. But they won't really need him to move that often in Seattle.
And he was really stout in college at his college weight at 305.
Yeah, so Griff, you were impressed by the college all 22 when you got your hands on it.
Yeah, he's strong as hell. Like he works, he can engage a block, stay engaged with it, and still move laterally really well. A lot of college defensive tackles trick you because they're good college defensive tackles, but then they don't translate in the NFL. And you think, well, at least the run defense would translate, right? But it's because they can't move. So he can actually move while engaged with the block, like against zone. Like, yeah, he eats up inside zone, he eats up duo, but outside zone, he keeps his leverage and doesn't lose whatever vertical ground he's gained on the center or guard or both.
So here's like a slight slant from him, but really good striking and the lockout. You can see the ability to hold up against stuff.
I mean, he's as available as he can be in the backside A gap, right?
Yeah. Not much as a pass rusher. There is a rep coming up where he has something as a pass rusher.
Yeah. And they didn't give him very many opportunities to, like, it makes you think if he consistently gets man protection, he can just bull rush the center. Like, what is he capable of?
Well, even here, like the way he catapults his own dude.
Yeah. I mean, look at 71. He gets kind of jolted a little bit.
This is the pass rush rep coming up. And I should also say, against Georgia, he showed in 2022, the tape that I have access to, he showed similar good traits, just less opportunities to do it, even less.
So, like, this is really like one of like 2 snaps all game where he actually has a two-way go with the center, and there's like
pure one-on-one.
And like this kind of shows, one, it's kind of leads to my like anti-center agenda that like very few of them can actually block people. And it's so rare that we actually see centers in one-on-one situations where they're actually asked to block. But this is kind of like, yeah, like he makes a center look undersized because they are undersized. But it's still an Alabama center, it's SEC real deal football. And he's the stronger guy.
Absolutely. And, we haven't heard much out of camp about him, but really his time to shine is now. Like the pads came on today when we're recording this episode. He won't have been able to show much until the pads are on, and then his play strength is really going to start showing up and his ability to strike guys. This is hard to tell if he's late off the ball or slanting, but he is able to keep the leverage and work down the line. Like he's won against that block.
Yeah. Going back to what we were talking about Morris earlier, remember how I said like some guys can be a little lousy with their technique for whatever reason, and they still hold up just because they have the traits too. Like this is that. Like he has natural anchor, and he's able to keep faith. Like he regains leverage after initially losing it.
Yeah, like here as well, the guard pads back or chips on him, and he doesn't even get knocked over. He just is fine. Yeah,
and he kind of takes the lineman for a little bit of a ride too.
Yeah. We will find a rep of him just pure power stepping into someone without the slant, but there is a lot of kind of little slanting.
And like this is a good play too because he's able to cross face on the guard.
Great play.
Yeah, Yeah, it's
he doesn't just play like, take out one gap with the way he slants. He's cheating the math here for the defense.
mm-hmm.
And one thing which, I mean, this is pretty quick reactions to the running back cutting up, but he recognizes plays so fast. There's a play where he gets a tip drill. I think it's against Arkansas in 2022, where he quickly recognizes that I think it's an RPO, and his ability to quickly get his hands up is very impressive. I've put he beats the guard into the backfield.
Like that is you're not drafting him for lateral quickness, but that's reactiveness and like ball get off and reaction time. Like the fact that he has that capacity in him to gain a gap, basically. Well, he's technically the A gap player already, but it's a really tight alignment. Well, actually, maybe he's organizes
I think
the
he's
3
skinny
technique
down,
and he's just cheating it because he knows he's supposed to slant. But still,
you'd like him to get rid of the hands so his side isn't exposed so much. But like, I think shows I think he'd be able to. I think he has enough lateral quickness, like you said, to be able to slant if they wanted.
mm-hmm.
And I think they will. A tiny.
I mean, we want to see a return of fire zones against certain blocking schemes and formations, right?
Yeah.
So a power stepping. It's weird because he's in a 0, but I think because it's goal line, they're like he knows he's just gonna.
Yeah.
They know he just needs to drive into the block, so he might as well come out of his blocks the way that's most comfortable to get knocked back in it.
I loved how he was able. This is a big rep, so he's staying in there. I think they are. I don't know if they're designing that, but the ability to play the shade, heavy knockback into the center, and again, it looks like he may have lost. If this is his A gap, it looks like he may have lost it, but he's able to lock out, and he almost uses the combo to make him right. And I'll show you the wide copy to show you how he kind of makes this run. I mean, it's designed to go wide. There's no cutback here. The way he knocks that into the backfield, but the ability to absorb this scoop combination, doesn't really. If anything, like I said, it just helps him out. He doesn't get moved by it.
It's really impressive play. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at the wide copy, that's real. That center's because of how he knocked back the center.
Yeah.
The center is, trying to run him out to the sideline and reach block him. He doesn't get that done, but also he can't really move wide because he's pushed backwards. It slows down the width of the backside of that. Because really they're wanting to create wash on the backside. Now maybe it looks like it's designed to go super wide anyway, but against a similar scoop combination, if they were designing to cut back, there's nothing doing here. This is a pretty impressive job.
Yeah. Now it would be nice if the receiver blocked the corner. That's pretty bad. And then it'd be nice if the corner made the tackle, but this still goes for 8-9 yards, but the D-line play right there, like the D-line did their job right there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Cam Young. So
his game is just full of strain, which is something football coaches talk about, but it's that kind of ability to anchor in there. I found this play impressive as well.
Yep, I love this play.
Like he's knocking the crap out of guys. I think he falls here because I think he gets tripped by 94, but he makes the tackle while falling. No, I think he gets tripped by the guy he's dominating. Or maybe he is just being pancaked. But anyway, he makes the tackle.
Yeah, no, this is a baller play. This is baller one-tech play.
And we believe Seattle is going to play a bit more shades this season.
Yeah, so in the base 3-4, we'd be talking about like an eagle, right? So it's where you've got 2-3 techniques, maybe 1-4, 1-3 technique, but your nose, you let him play a shade, let him play one technique instead of 0. And if he's just more comfortable with that, then structure your defense accordingly. Like, let the nose play what he's comfortable with. Like, he's going to have to play some zero, and there aren't a lot of examples of him mirror stepping as a zero technique. So that will be the main thing to look for, I think.
I love the hand placement here. This is thumb up, strike under the pads, right in the breasts of the O lineman to stand him up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is against Alabama. Like, this isn't some kind of messy team. Like, this is a team who wants to run the ball. They have size. They have NFL size. A lot of the run concepts are very applicable to the NFL. Here, again, this is the type of stuff that they'll see in the NFL. This is a tight gap combo. He kind of gets moved back by this play. What did I write down? I think this is an example of how the extra weight will help him, because he stays on the center here. He just needs a tiny bit more mass, but he's not moved back too much. Like, if you think he starts here and he keeps the center and guard off, he just needs this back at the screen downhill. He's anchoring in there a bit. Like, he went back a yard, still there. He joins the tackle at the end, so he's not knocked over. But you can sort of see what a bit of extra weight will do for him. This backer just needs to fire downhill, and obviously we don't know what they've been taught on defense. I don't watch Mississippi State ad nauseum. But considering he's supposedly just over 300 pounds here, it shows what technique can do. You see he's straining.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think
he's
Alabama would
just
like
stick
to
on the center and ignore the guard.
And you think Alabama would want ideally more surge there right out of their stance. They don't get it.
Yeah, they score the touchdown because whatever happened over here.
So he has an anchor.
I put this as another good strike on the center, not getting caught up on the guard. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty excuse my language. That's pretty impressive work.
Yeah,
the back doesn't see anything that he likes here. This linebacker's come down here a bit more. Okay, there's a bounce out. That's not his job. He's held up. He's kept his backer clean. He struck the center, and he hasn't really moved. As good as you can do it.
Yeah.
It's a shame this guy didn't make the play. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, he should be fitting right off of...
he should be screaming down here.
Yeah, because the ball's spilled completely.
We're gapped out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he doesn't know whether this guy's going in or out, does he? No.
It's still very bad stack track fallback.
Yeah, and so what's cool about this young tape is all the plays where he doesn't move, it's very similar. This is a slant as well. But he gets comboed and he does stay in there again and win into the gap that he was slanting towards. So let's see if he slants left or right from the zero tech. Okay, just stays on his guard, kind of, and gets into the gap eventually. He also plays with a pretty good effort level on the D line.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Gets after it. I want to find the tip drill. Kentucky 2021. Okay, here we go. And again, Kentucky, like, for whatever you want to say about them, they were trying to run an NFL style offense. But Griff, what do you think, as I try and find this impressive play from Young? Year one for him, to me, it could be more play time than Mike Morris, not just because he was picked a whole round earlier, but like they're asking a lot of Jaron Reed and they don't have anyone else. And maybe the run stuffing nose only plays in base 3-4, and Reed can do a bit of both, as we know. Whereas I don't think Young has that yet. But
I think we see him as the nickel one technique, at least in mixed situations. Brian Monet wasn't healthy all year long, but he played 250 snaps. Al Woods played about 300. There's probably 500 snaps that they need there at the spot. I mean, it'd be cool if like between Reed and Young, they can handle nose tackle, and then one of the two, maybe preferably Young, could spill over a little bit and play 3 technique 4-eye a little bit too, because they might need help on the edge. Especially say Brian Monet comes back in the middle of the season and say Monet is good to go and they actually want to rotate him in there for 10, 15 snaps a game, then one of the two would definitely, if they're playing well enough and you just want them on the field, because say they're one of your 4 or 5 best run defenders, then at that point you could rotate Young in at end, where he'd be run oriented only. He's not rushing the passer there, but that could be an option as well. So yeah, I mean, I think if all goes well, I think Cam Young could be a 400 snap player.
This is the tip drill I was talking about. And yeah, that's what I think as well.
Yeah.
The way he just plays the technique, it just looks Seattle-like, as I said, even before they drafted him. So here he is. This is a tip drill. The reaction time to this is pretty impressive. And that shows up as well when they're slanting, his ability to find where the ball's actually going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was nice.
Yeah, that's
he's not like he's cheating the pass immediately or like trying to get his hands up. He's trying to slant into his gap. He recognizes pass. He then tries to get a hand up. Then he makes the pick. There's a clear progression and reaction speed, which like this, he makes this look a lot easier. There's a lot of guys who wouldn't be able to do that. So he just has a nose for the ball. And yeah, his tackles, okay, slanting does lead to tackles because you fool the blocking scheme and you get unblocked guys and you penetrate into the backfield a bit more. But his tackles are also because he gets after it and he can react to plays, along with being a problem just one-on-one. Yeah, and this is a Will Levis special, but maybe he'll be a good player, maybe.
Perhaps.
So Griff is yawning. That is 2 Seahawks draft picks done in one. Now, if you'd like to know anything else, please do ask in the comments. But that's us. That's us done. Me and Ty are going to be back on Thursday and possibly Griff with a newsy training camp kind of style recap. Fats McClure, thank you so much for your donation. That's super, super kind.
Thank you, Fats.
I won't be buying candy. And we won't be. Your Griff will be. There you go. Trader Joe's special. It probably costs $150 Trader Joe's candy. But yeah, thank you, Fats. And everyone else, this is a podcast. Download it, review it, 5-star review it. Follow Griff at CMike Spin Move. Follow me at Matty F. Brown. Thank you for tuning in. Again, we're going to be regular each week, so we're not going anywhere. And hopefully the Seahawks have a good season with these rookies that we've taken a look at this season. All right. Until next time, this has been the Seattle Overload Podcast. Oh, and I have a Substack. It's called Seahawks on Tape.
Yeah.
There's going to be a 5-day defensive review article looking at tape that the Seahawks themselves posted, along with big storylines like what's happening at corner and who is the nose tackle and all that sort of stuff. We've kind of covered a bit of that in this episode. But thank you, everyone. Goodbye.